Okay guys, so sitting behind me here is the 20, which I mentioned in the video of me getting the 15 horsepower Johnson running. I was in the process of getting it ready for painting, restoring it, all that sort of stuff. So today's video is going to be a bit on restoring an outboard. So as you can see, I have done a bulk of work to it at the moment. It's got a fresh coat of paint all over the lower cowling and the lower leg. It's also got a coat of paint on the exhaust cover and a couple of little bits here and there, such as your cover latch, the trim tilt lock, as well as the knob for the trim tilt, shift lever, which you can't see at the moment. There's a couple of things around the right hand side, or as I should call it, the port side for any of you who sail or boaties. That's a couple of things on the port side which I've also done. Now, the finish I used on this lower leg, it's not the best, but I don't mind it. I reckon it's going to be a long-lasting finish because of how many coats I've put on. But yeah, it's not come up too bad. It's got a little bit of shine to it, which I don't mind. It's not overbearing, which for fishing, I'm sort of thinking that this shine is going to be better, because a really glossy finish, probably not the best when you're out in the sun fishing, just glaring into your eyes. But yeah, it is a lot of coats on this at the moment. So what I've got is I think one coat of etch primer I put on the whole outboard. Etch primer is sort of like a metal sort of primer. Put on, it sticks to paint and all sorts of stuff. It sticks better than sort of regular primer, I believe. That's what I've always been told. So it's got one coat of that. It's got 2 coats of regular grey primer over the etch primer, and then I've sanded all that down, ready to put the paint on. So the paint is just Rust-Oleum white. It is flat white, so it hasn't got, as I said, a super great finish, not a really glossy finish. But it has come out all right, and I have put on this, I think I put 3 coats of that on top of the primer. So at the moment we've got 3 coats of primer and 3 coats of paint, so paint's pretty thick. And then I've got 2 or 3 coats of clear coat over the top of that, just to seal it all off. Okay, looking at our port side now, we have the Powerhead, lower cowling, and then the lower leg. I haven't painted the inside of the lower cowling because obviously you don't see that, and it's got an okay paint job on it at the moment. Like it'll probably do fine. And in here I usually spray CRC or WD-40 over everything in the engine, so I doubt this is going to corrode anytime soon. So coming over to our starboard side, we have our shift lever here, which I talked about. It's all painted up. Got a couple of new grommets I've fitted all around. All these, I believe these are your holes for your remote start and remote steer and remote shift and all that sort of stuff, where the actual shifting mechanism bolts onto it. And then you've got obviously your gear shift lever here, which is controlled by that. Because this is a tiller steer, rope start, it's got the shifter here. I think some older ones did have the shifter on the side, but I prefer the ones that are up the front. They're a lot easier to shift. Not reaching around on your starboard side trying to shift it in. But yeah, as you can see, I do have a couple of little bits of, how would I put it? Oh, I don't know, like little sort of fandangled aspects to it. So like just a little bit of painting of all our set screws, any screws that are basically hanging out. Like up here, I've painted all these Powerhead mounting screws, or cowling. I think, yeah, oh no, they are Powerhead mounting screws. All of our, I still have to paint that, all of our motor mounts. I have to paint that mount black there, so it looks a bit more the part. All of our exhaust cover, as I said, it's all painted. Again, same on this side with all our bolts and our motor mounts. Throttle linkage, I didn't paint the fuel coupling. That was already clean enough, so I just left that. And then that's another one of our little grommets on the side. But yeah, other than that, the old Powerhead isn't looking too bad, I reckon. I reckon this outboard's going to turn out pretty alright. Okay, so we've got our upper cowling here, or hood, whatever you want to call it. And I've done a little bit to it already. I've got the starboard side decal off. All I need to do is pull our port side decal off. So I also have this. So I didn't mention that. I would show you the decals. So these are the decals. I got them from Majestic Graphics in Victoria. Don't mind the 25. I am trying to find a one of those decals, but with a 20 instead of a 25. But yeah, these are decals that will be going on it. So I think that's the wrong side. There we go, that's the one I'm after. So yeah, they're going to replace it. I know they're not the exact same as the old ones, but I actually like this style of decal better than those old ones. I think these ones make the outboard look more outdated than it actually is. Because it is a I think it's a 1992 model. For the decals it's got on it at the moment, I think they make it look a bit classic. I want it to look a bit more modern with this paint job, so. But yeah, I didn't actually, as I said, get the 20 horsepower decals. They didn't sell them, unfortunately. No one seems to actually sell the 20 horsepower decals for this outboard. But yeah, so I'm just going to be leaving the front and the back for the moment, until I can actually source some correct ones. Now, with this decal, I do want to keep it, so I'm going to try and, how do I put it, try and preserve it as much as I can. Just leave them over there. But yeah, what I've got here, I've got a heat gun and a razor blade. So what we're going to do, we're going to heat up the decal with the heat gun on a low heat setting, high fan. So low heat setting, I know that's on 6. I was using 5, and that seemed to get it off really easily. You don't want to do it too hot, otherwise you'll do all sorts of damage to your fiberglass and underneath. Yeah, you don't really want that, because that will destroy the cowling and make your life a big misery. So, as I said, I have done the other side, so I've got a little bit of experience up my sleeves doing that, and what to do and what not to try and do. One thing I found out on that side was to be patient. So yeah, patience is key, I guess, when you're doing this. So yeah, we'll get into it. I'll start heating it up and we'll start peeling away. Alrighty, now that we have the decals off this side and also this side, I'm going to want to sand down the surface where those decals were. Also going to try sanding up here, but before we do that, to take this latch off, as well as this front and rear name emblems. So we'll do that in a tick. Once we've sanded this down, then we can move on to sanding this, bogging it, and then sanding it over again. And then we'll finally be able to put our layers of paint and primer on this hood. But yeah, the hood's looking pretty alright now. So I just gave it a little bit of a wipe over with a rag, some mineral turpentine. It's just alcohol, so they'll get rid of all the dust off of it. Obviously this isn't the last wipe over it's going to have. It's just to clean all the dust off it so I can get a feel of the surface, see where all the high spots are, what needs bogging, etc. And overall, it all actually feels pretty nice. Except for the parts over here, which obviously need bogging. But other than that, cowl itself is in pretty good condition. So I reckon mix some bog up, put some bog into these, obviously take our and our little accessories off on the hood at the moment. Take them off and then bog it all up. We should be good. Okay, so what we've got here, this is our actual filler putty. So we'll take a little bit of that out, if I can. There we go. Now this stuff is stringy and it's a bit hard to work. Oh, and mind what I just said, that actually come out pretty easy. I'll go a little bit more than what I tend on using. It's always better to have too much than not enough. But don't go right over the top, because obviously you might waste some if you go over the top. So now next thing I want to do, this is I think they call it activator. I'm not entirely sure on the exact name, but yeah, I believe this is the activator. This is what causes it to set. So we'll put not too much in, because I don't want it to set too much and it'll set while I'm mixing, or when I'm applying it. Too little and it won't actually set in a decent time. I reckon that's probably decent enough. Not too much, not too little. So now what we'll do is we'll mix this filler around. We'll mix the activator and the filler. Mix it up and get it working around. Don't want it to dry, that's all. So quickly mix this up. That's getting pretty good now. Getting to a stage that I'll be happy with. So it's still malleable. So I've put probably alright amount of activator in there. I reckon it was a bit on the low side how much I put in there, but that's alright. I'm happy to wait a little bit. I've got a couple other jobs I've got to do anyway. So I'll put a little bit there, a little bit there. Come on, stick. There we go. A little bit there. Now, I'm not really worried how much I put on at like first when I'm doing it. I can fix that up later. Right now, I need a bit more. Try and apply it quickly so it doesn't set. That's all. It's already setting now. Yeah. Oh, that's already set there. I'm definitely going to have to mix some more up, because a lot of that is already set. So a lot of what I managed to actually fill though, so that's alright. Never an issue. We'll do, scrape that off, and we'll mix up another batch. Right, this is like fully professional job right here. This looks good. Yeah, it looks a bit crap, but believe me, it'll turn out alright. The more the better. At least the more you put on, the less you'll have to do later on. I know the less we put onto my tractor's bonnet, the more we had to put on later, because there was always little pits in it. So yeah, we'll sand this off once it's dried, which Actually, it might already be. It feels pretty dry. It's still got a little bit on there, but I reckon we'll leave it for another 10 and I'll come back and I'll start sanding and see where we get. Alright, so that's our bog sanded right down. Overall, not too bad of a result. I still need to fill in some bits, as you can see, that I've chipped out, and we also have a couple of little holes here and there, but that's alright. Actually really not bad for a first time on this cowling. So yeah, it shouldn't take too much bog to fill in all those little gaps there, but yeah, I reckon we'll be done in the next couple of minutes. Alrighty, there we go. That's our second lot of bog put on. A little bit more thin this time. I mixed up probably a bit of batch, but yeah, no, not as much to fill. So pretty pleased. That stuff won't take too long to sand down, hopefully. Just wait for it to dry now. Okay, so the second coat of bog is now finished. Sanded it all down nice and flush, really nice and smooth now. Really like it. Can't feel too many imperfections in it. So we'll put a quick lot of etch primer over it. I'll obviously tape up all this seal here, but we will dump a bit of etch primer onto it and we'll see, because the etch primer will bring up any more imperfections that may need to be fixed, which means we have to sand the primer down just a little bit and then bog up the little spots that we missed if we do actually get any. So what we'll do, mask and tape this whole rubber seal, and then I will lay the first coat of primer. Alrighty, finish on this hood, cowling, sorry, it's looking absolutely fantastic. Really happy with it. That was just by doing light coats first and then slapping it on a little bit heavier as we went. Other than that, really happy with how the finish has come out. Mind you, with one of these rattle cans. So, proof that you don't really need to use a gun, even though I do have one, to get an awesome finish. You just need to do your preparation correctly. Sure you're sanding down your primer, cleaning off the primer really well with terps and a rag afterwards, and you'll have a finish as good as that. That's bloody beautiful. Rightio, so we now got the cowling mounted up. All the paint is nice and dry, and I've put the what do you call this? This would be the port side decal on. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to put this starboard side decal on. So there's all of our decals on. As you can see, I did put a 25 decal on the front, as well as the standard grey decal on the back. Now, although this isn't to Johnson, it isn't actually a 20 horsepower. It kind of is though, because Johnson, if you don't know, switch from, well, I've been told this, they switch from recording motor power to prop horsepower, and I've been told that you lose 5 horsepower from the motor to the gearbox and the prop. So technically, this engine is still actually a 25 horsepower. It's just not 25 horsepower at the prop. It's 20 horsepower. Because on the GT20 Johnsons, this intake here, which houses your reed valves and your carburetor comes into it, that reed valve assembly is actually off a 30 to 35 horsepower Johnson. I believe they also fitted them to some 25s, but the parts book itself states the part number on that intake is for a 30 to 35 horsepower Johnson. So technically this engine could be equipped with a 25 or a 30 or a 35 horsepower carburetor and it would go completely fine. So yeah, I'm just going to be keeping the 25 decals for now because I reckon I'll be happy with that. But I think it looks the part with the decals on. It looks like a very modern outboard. Anywho, on to the next project for this restoration. Alrighty, so for part 2, we're going to be working on this leg again. So you would have seen the first video I got this running. It has this massive nick out of the top of the leg here. I have fixed the skeg. I said the skeg was a little bit buggered, but what I've done is I've just cut that down and rounded it off. So it looks pretty much perfect at the moment, till it's got a paint job on it, of course. But yeah, no, it looks like the older outboards, and most outboards I've seen have the skeg just in line with the whole lower unit, unlike these Johnsons where it comes down, which is weird. But I'm happy to just leave it like that, because if it sticks out like that, it's more susceptible to being broken off again if I hit something. So I'm just going to leave it like that, how it is. I might get a skeg guard for it sometime. But we have this cardboard cutout here, which will go up in here once it's cut out. Well, it goes up in there. That's basically how the leg's supposed to be, how it's supposed to look. And we'll cut this 4mm aluminium out in the shape of that cardboard cutout. And then what my dad will do for me is he's just going to weld it on there. And I'll see about this little anode, it's not an anode, I got corrected on that. It's a trim tab, just a trim tab on its own. But I was thinking of bogging it up to get the portion where the anode sits, and I could use this socket here to create my round part all the way around, because this 38mm socket is the perfect diameter of the trim tab. So yeah, that's what is going to be coming in part 2. But for now, that is our cowling and our lower leg completely restored.